The women's 400 meters in Tokyo just delivered the fastest race ever run since 1985. I expected it to be quick, but I never imagined it would reach the level we saw in the finals. At first, I honestly thought Marileidy Paulino was going to snatch it from Sydney, but Sydney had already set the tone in the semifinals when she ran a 48.29 lap, the fastest time ever by an American woman in the 400. She did that on September 16th, day 4 of the Tokyo World Championships. It was a huge statement, and it showed that she was bringing something special to the championship final. Then 2 days later, and Sydney does something almost nobody would have predicted. She ran under 48 seconds. The last time the world saw a sub-48 performance was in 1985, when Marileidy Paulino set her legendary world record. Sydney's new mark of 47.78 seconds places her as the second fastest 400-meter runner in history. That's just 0.18 seconds away from Paulino's 47.6 world record. Only 0.18 of a second. Sydney is clearly on another level. She managed to set 2 all-time marks at a world championship, a stage where most athletes focus only on winning medals. At this point, it doesn't even feel like she's competing against her rivals. It feels like she's competing against history itself. But as much as Sydney deserves every bit of recognition, Marileidy Paulino also ran the race of her life. At 28 years of age, she has always been a standout performer in the 400 meters. But what she did in Tokyo was something she had never achieved before. Coming into the final, her personal best was 48.17, a time she set at the Olympic Games in 2024. Since then, Paulino had dipped under 49 seconds only once for the whole of 2025 season. Across more than 10 races this season, nothing suggested she would suddenly leap into all-time territory. But, pushed by Sydney, Paulino tapped into a level she may not have known existed. She crossed the line in 47.98 seconds. This was also the first time in history that a single race produced 2 sub-48 performances, and with Naser at 48.19, 3 athletes went faster than 48.20 in the same final. No women's 400 meters has ever had this kind of depth. That performance made her the 3rd fastest woman in history, just behind Sydney and ahead of Jarmila Kratochvilova. Now, only 3 athletes in history have ever broken 48 seconds in the women's 400 meters. Marileidy Paulino, Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone, and Marileidy Paulino. Up until today, Paulino's 47.6 stood in a class of its own, with no one even remotely close. But Sydney and Paulino have now emerged as the closest challengers to that mark. Looking ahead, Sydney has already proven she can reach the 47.7 range, so a 47.6 doesn't seem impossible, especially as she is shifting her career focus to the 400 as her main event. In 3rd place, taking bronze, was Eid Naser. She almost equaled her personal best in this race, running 48.19 in the final to secure the medal. PB of 48.14 was set back in 2019, and this was the closest she has come to that time since. It was a huge performance, but in a race of this standard, it was only good enough for 3rd. To put that in perspective, Naser's 48.19 would have been fast enough to win gold at nearly every global championship before this one. Isn't that insane? Before Sydney entered the picture, it was Naser and Paulino who defined the 400 meters. Since 2020, these 2 athletes had been the dominant forces, battling for every medal and keeping the event at the highest level. They carried the event for nearly 3 years, but now, with Sydney McLaughlin-Levrone stepping fully into the flat 400, the dynamic has completely changed. Naser and Paulino know that they are no longer only racing each other. They now face a new standard, a barrier set by someone who is rewriting the event altogether. Now, first of all, conditions in Tokyo weren't even ideal. There was light rain earlier, the skies were dull, and showers continued off and on throughout the night. Honestly, I didn't expect to see any fast times given the weather. And yet, Sydney still produced a 47.7 run, while Paulino dipped under 48 for the first time in her career. To make it even more impressive, Paulino did it from lane 8, traditionally considered a disadvantage because athletes can't see the field until late in the race. When you put these factors together, the weather, the lane assignments, the pressure of a world final, you start to realize just how extraordinary these performances were. It also raises the question of what more these athletes can accomplish if they continue pushing each other into 2026. Paulino is 28, Naser is 27, and Sydney is 26. All 3 are still in their athletic prime. They have now established themselves as the gold standard of the modern 400 meters, and they have time to go even faster. For context, Marileidy Paulino was 28 when she set her world record in 1985, at an IAAF meet in Australia. She defeated Olga Vladikina of the Soviet Union, who finished second with 48.27. Koch's margin that day was nearly 7/10ths of a second compared to Olga. In Tokyo, Sydney was only about 2/10ths of a second ahead of Paulino, meaning the gap between first and second was far smaller. That alone suggests that if conditions had been more favorable, or if Paulino had been placed in one of the middle lanes, 3, 4, or 5, she might have ran even faster, perhaps a sub 47.9. Of course, this is speculation, but lane assignments do play a psychological role in how athletes race. Having the stagger advantage or disadvantage can subtly change strategy and rhythm. Regardless, what we saw in Tokyo proves that this event is entering a new era. Koch's 40-year-old record no longer feels untouchable. Paulino may yet lower her mark. Naser, already close to breaking 48, has another chance to reach that barrier, and Sydney, having already produced a 47.7, looks more likely than anyone to break the world record, maybe even sooner than we expect.